Welcome to your Certificate in Principles of Team Leading Level 2, Session 1 of 2. In this session, we'll be covering Principles of Team Leading. Understand business, understand how to communicate work-related information. My name's Phil Church and I shall be your guide and your narrator for this session. This NCFE Level 2 online course, Certificates in Principle of Team Leading, has been brought to you by Poplar Harker and Solucious Equinox Online Training Solutions. A warm welcome to Solucious Equinox Limited and your online training session today. We sincerely hope that the sessions we have planned for you meets your individual needs and expectations. Our training courses are designed to be thought-provoking and engaging, and we encourage you to partake in the online discussion sessions in order for you to absorb as much of the learning as possible. And that online session will be following this PowerPoint session straight after this. Our trainers are highly qualified and experienced in their respective fields of expertise, so please feel free to ask questions. Each of our trainers brings a wealth of knowledge from their previous backgrounds, and they are happy to chat with you at the conclusion of your training session today. As I said, my name is Phil Church and I worked in the public sector for 15 years as a police officer with the British Transport Police. I've worked in various operational and specialist roles. I also have a Chartered Managers Institute Level 5 Leadership and Management Diploma, and I'm also a Chartered Manager Institute Chartered Manager, as well as being a co-director of Solucious Equinox Limited. I'm also currently a safeguarding lead on the governing body of an Essex Primary Academy. I hold several teaching and assessing qualifications. I also have a degree in policing through the Canterbury Christ Church University. I have also delivered levy apprenticeships in leadership and management and safeguarding to the third and private sectors and safeguarding and specialist training to police forces. My co-director, Jason Hunt. Jason was previously a police officer for 22 years with the West Midlands Police, Nottinghamshire Police, City of London Police, Royal Cayman Islands Police, Essex Police and British Transport Police. He has also worked in various operational and specialist roles. He has a CMI Level 5 Leadership and Management Diploma and is also a Chartered Manager, as well as being my colleague and co-director of Solucious Equinox Limited. Jason holds several teaching and assessing qualifications and he has a degree in policing through Canterbury Christ Church University. He also delivers levy apprenticeships in leadership and management and safeguarding to the third and private sectors and safeguarding and specialist training to police forces. So the units are Principles of Team Leading. And what is your learning journey? Well, session 1 of 1, Principles of Team Leading, is today. That will be followed by an online teaching support. Once you've completed this, you'll then go on to do your session 2, which is understand business and understand how to communicate work-related information, followed by an online teaching support. Once these 2 sessions are completed, you'll be able to complete your online assessment 1, which is submitted to us through the ePortfolio system. You'll have additional tutor support sessions throughout these entire programs, and then you'll be following another session 1 of 2, understand how to deliver customer service and resolve problems, understand how to develop working relationships with colleagues. Online teaching support will be followed again from that session. Once that's completed, you'll be able to move on to session 2 of 2, Introduction to Coaching, Introduction to Mentoring, Understanding Personal Development, and again followed by an online teaching support. And again, after that is completed, you'll be able to finish and complete an online assessment 2 submitted through the ePortfolio system. As I stated earlier on, you'll receive full tutor support throughout this program, and there is no such thing as a daft question. If you have something that is burning you that you need to be able to speak to us about regarding your program, please let us know. And once this is completed, you'll be able to qualify in your Level 2 Certificate in Principles of Team Leading. Really important parts to note about your assignments and how you complete these. It's important that you understand the action verbs in the assignment questions. The action verbs are thus: define. Your answer must give the precise meaning of a word. Describe. In order to describe something, you must give a detailed account of it. Explain. You need to ensure that your answer is clear, revealing relevant facts. And finally, identify. Point out and explain. Your answer should establish who or what something is. These are the primary action verbs that are used within your Level 2 Certificate in Principles of Team Leading. So please, when you're answering your questions, please ensure that you are actually following these action verbs. If something's asking you to explain something, don't just give us a list. Please ensure that you have relevant, revealing facts about what you are trying to write. If something's asking you to identify something, don't just write down the name. For example, if one of them is asking you to identify a technique for a management tool, don't just write Bruce Tuckman. Tell us a little bit about what Bruce Tuckman said and what John Adair's action-centered leadership was about. That way we know that you know and understand what you are writing. We will tutor you throughout the program and help you to complete the 2 assignments. And once you submit your assignments online, they will be assessed. All your completed assignments will then be submitted for internal and external quality assurance. And once this process is complete, you will be awarded your qualification. Now, as I stated, we have a remote assistance service and we can be contacted at learners@solutionsequinox.com. Please ensure that your emails are marked with NCFE Leadership. We also have 2 telephone numbers located at the bottom here that you can contact us on, but it's really important that your subject headings for your emails are marked with NCFE Leadership. That way we can ensure that we can answer your inquiries as soon as possible. Session, Learning Outcome 1. In this session, you'll understand leadership styles in organisations, and our objectives for learning are: describe characteristics of effective leaders, describe different leadership styles and their potential impact on team performance, explain the benefits of effective leadership for organisations. And characteristics of an effective leader. What characteristics do you think an effective leader should have? Think to some of the leaders that you have worked with. You may be a leader yourself. You may run a department. You may work in a group. You may be part of a team. What characteristics do you think that leader should have? Well, for a start, they really should be honest and reliable. We can't have a leader that's not honest and reliable. If we can't trust them, how do we think they're going to lead us? Do we trust what they're telling us to do? They need to be self-confident. How can we have a leader that is very scared and very aware of who and what they are doing? They need to be able to drive from the front. They need to be able to be conscious of themselves' ability to be able to do something. If they're not self-confident, they won't be able to. They need to be a good influencer and a motivator of others. If they're driving a team, they should be able to drive from the front. They should be able to influence those around them in order to spur them on to get the task done and for the objectives of the group and the team and for the company. They need to be proactive, decisive and willing to take the initiative. When others are not willing to step up, they step up to take the lead. They should be ambitious, focused, and driven to achieve the goals for the team, for the task, for the company. They should inspire others. Others should look towards them and look upon what a great leader they are. And the fact that they're actually leading from the front, they're being decisive, they're taking the initiative, they're driving to achieve the goals. Others should look around them and think, this is what I want to be. I want to be like this person. Be inspirational and a visionary. Be able to see and vision where the goal of the team should be and where they can be in a 6 months' time or a year's time to achieve their goals. Be energetic, enthusiastic, being adaptable and good at analysing situations or problems. So if a problem does arise within a team, they can adapt to it without causing any creative problems. They can see the situation coming, they can adapt to it, they can adapt the team, and they can solve the problem before it becomes a crisis. They're a good persuader. Some people may not feel motivated to work, but this person, rather than shouting and stamping about, they're a good persuader. They'll show you the reasons why that they need you to do something. And that drive, that ambition is infectious, and they can persuade that person to work. They're good under pressure. What's the point of buckling when the heat is on? When everybody's looking around at the leader, they want them to be good under pressure. If the team has got a target, they've got a test, they've got something they need to meet, they need to be good under pressure to work. Which of these characteristics would you give to the leaders here now on the bottom of the screen? There's Donald Trump, there's Sir Winston Churchill, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King. Would you say that Donald Trump was self-confident? Is Sir Winston Churchill, was he good under pressure? Is Mahatma Gandhi honest and reliable, an inspiration and a visionary? Was Martin Luther King ambitious, focused, inspiring others? Think about what each of these characteristics mean. Would you be able to describe them to someone? Do you understand what they are? And why are they important in a leader? Because your assignment question is asking you this. Describe characteristics of effective leaders. Now, further reading can be found on page 5 of your unit handbook to help you answer this question. But have a think about some of the ones that we've just covered. Self-confident, adaptable and good at analysis. Proactive, decisive, willing to take the initiative. They're ambitious, focused on achieving goals, good under pressure. Honest and reliable, energetic, enthusiastic. They're an inspirational and they're a visionary. Good at influencing, motivating others. Good at persuading and inspiring others. Do you think that these should be characteristics of an effective leader? Think about some of the managers you've had in the past. You may yourself have been a manager and still are. But think about the styles of their leadership. Have you ever met someone who insisted the only way of doing things was their way? Did they impose penalties or punishments on rule breakers? Or did they value and encourage you to give an opinion? Did they let their staff do their own thing? Or did your manager make you feel like you were a big part of the family? So, did they insist the only way of doing things was their way? How did this make you feel and work? And if they imposed penalties or punishments on rule breakers, how did this make you feel and work? If they encouraged you, valued you, and wanted you to give an opinion, How did this make you feel in work? And did your manager make you feel like you were part of a big family? And how did this make you feel in work? There are several different types of styles of leadership. But what do you think that someone who insists the only way of doing things is their way only, and won't listen to the opinions of others? Well, that style is called autocratic. The people that impose the penalties or punishments on rule breakers, they're autocrats. If someone wants to give you value and encourages you to have an opinion, and you have round table discussions, and you can work out problems and you can iron them all out, well, that's a democratic style of manager. If the manager or leader let the staff do their own thing because they trusted them, that's called laissez-faire. And if your manager was someone who made you feel like you were part of a big family, that's called paternalistic. They're still an authority figure, but they treat the employees as a family, almost like a father or mother figure. They can motivate employees to work harder. Thinking about the different types of leadership styles there are, in what work environment might they be effective? The assignment question is asking you this for question 2. Describe 4 different leadership styles and their potential impact on team performance. Now, in your handbook, you can see these on pages 6 to 8 to help you answer this question. But I've just given you some good examples here: autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire, and paternalistic. Now, this is Tannenbaum-Schmidt's Leadership Behaviour Continuum. Now, as you can see on this scale, at number 1, the leader makes the decisions and announces it. And what kind of style of leadership is that? Could it be autocratic? The issue being here is as you start moving up the scale, the leader, number 2, decides and sells the benefits of a decision, but allows a bit more freedom to their staff. The leader will sell the decision to them. Ultimately, they're still holding the keys, but the staff feel they've got a little bit more freedom to make a decision over it, but they hear from the leader the benefits about it. In number 3, the leader decides but presents thinking, inviting exploration. And as you can see, as it starts working its way down, in number 4, leader presents tentative decisions. They're prepared to change it. They'll still present their own feelings, but they'll expect some sort of feedback from the team. As you can see, as you move to number 5, the leader presents the problem. They'll get suggestions from the team. They'll make a decision. In number 6, the leader defines the problem, asks the group to make the decision, so more freedom is being given to the staff. And in number 7, the leader allows the group to define the problem and make the decision. Now, if you can see, the authority used by the manager, the more squeeze you put on it, the more of a single leader you have, one authoritarian figure, an autocrat potentially. In this side, up towards more freedom being given to the member of staff, you have what's called as shared leadership, a democratic style of leadership where people can make a decision together. They will guide the team together. With authority being used by the manager, you'll see it as more manager-centered leadership, where if you look at the police, the military, some factories where decisions need to be made on the spot, the authority being used by the manager will be very, very much centered towards the leadership. Whereas democracy, with more freedom given to the staff are centered around the leadership rather than the manager. It's the team who are actually working together. Now, if you look at another leadership model by John Adair, this one's known as the action-centered leadership. It's a type of leadership that focuses on what leaders need to do more efficiently. Now, the theory revolves around key activities undertaken by the leader, including achieving a task, building and maintaining a team, and developing individuals in order to hone their talents and skills. Now, it basically works around 3 concentric circles based on a Venn diagram. Now, in this main circle, you will see there's an achieving task. Now, in this circle, it's about building the team. And in this task, it's developing an individual. Now, this is extremely important because you, as a leader and a manager, need to ensure that these circles stay circular, because honed right in the very centre of all 3 of those circles are your company's objectives, your main overall task, or if you're working in, say, for example, the health service, or you're working for the Department of Works and Pensions and you're looking after children, it could be the child that's centred right in the centre. Now, if you have a member on your team that has potential issues, childcare, they're constantly having a leaky roof, the boiler's constantly on the blink, they're arriving late, they have problems at home, that's going to concentrate a lot of focus from you as a team leader or manager. The problem is with concentrating too much on this individual is that individual starts to pull away from the task and from the team. Now, the idea is to keep all of these circles in check. The issue being is if you spend too much time on the team, you miss the individual. You might miss the individual coming in and going late. You might find that the individual feels that they're just part of a team and nothing more. You've got to keep the individual happy, welfare checked. Because what happens is, if you don't, the individual stretches away, the task gets skewed, and the central objectives get missed. If you're one of these managers that concentrates heavily on the task and that forgets about how to build and develop the team and how to look after the individual, both of them will start to pull away and become skewed. And again, you'll find some areas will eventually break away. You as a team leader, you as a manager, should, if you like, using a terminology as a helicopter, fly in on each one of these circles and check to make sure things are driving along nicely. Because what happens is if you miss one or you stay too long on one, the others could start pulling away. It's quite a good model, this one. This one particularly is my favourite because you can apply this to virtually every scenario a leader or a manager works in, where there is a central objective. It could be a company's objectives, could be your team's objectives, could be an individual sitting in the middle that gets skewed or missed and stretched. Now, Morton's leadership grid, it talks about you being a leader, a manager, or both. Now, Blake and Morton talks about a country club manager, a team manager, an impoverished manager, an authority obedience manager. Now, their managerial grid is based on 2 behavioural dimensions. Concern for people, and this is the degree to which a leader considers team members' needs, interests, and areas of personal development when deciding how to best accomplish a task, or where there is a concern for results. And this is the degree to which a leader emphasises concrete objectives, organisational efficiency and high productivity when deciding how to best accomplish a task. Now, Blake and Morton defined their leadership styles based on these. Now, ideally, a middle-of-the-road manager is a medium people and task. They focus on the work output as well as people morale. Because if you have a lot of concern for people, you hire up the rail as you go. You have a country club manager. You've got very, very high morale people. But really it's a low performing task. The task is it's not arduous. But you have very high performing people. People lounge about. They can put their feet up, quite happy, lackadaisical in some cases. You may have, in some cases, the task concern. Now, if you have a team manager with high-powered, high-concerned people concern, with high morale, and you have a high task, you're kind of in the really good area to be. Now, if you're very, very task-driven, think back to John Adair's model. Think back to the previous models that he was thinking about for some of the types of leadership style you may be. You might be quite authoritarian. You might want obedience. You'll have a low morale. You'll have low feedback. You'll have people. You've got low concern for people, but you've got very high concern for task. Now, there are times that may be needed. If you're suddenly presented with an 11th hour deadline and people need to snap into high gear, sorry folks, we need to burn the midnight oil on this one. We have got to crack on. We have got to get this done. I'm ever so sorry, people may be late home. That's authority. That's obedience. That's going to drop the morale of the team. However, you need to get the task done. But if you've got low people concern and you've got low task concern, you're impoverished. You've got no strengths as a team leader. Can you think of people that you've worked with or you know that could be an impoverished manager? Do you know people who could be a team manager? Do you know someone who's an authority, obedience style manager? This is great when you are moving about and adapting your style. That shows that you are a good manager. In fact, you could be a middle of the road manager, medium people and task, focuses well on the output. You're keeping everybody's morale high because you're making sure everybody's well. You have the ability to pop in to country club, to become an authoritarian if you need to. For goodness sake, don't drop into impoverished manager, because that's when you start becoming a poor leader. So what are the benefits of effective leadership for organisations? Well, role modelling and roles and behaviours. It creates job satisfaction. It reduces waste. Why does it reduce waste? It has improved customer experience, not only from your team, your stakeholders, but external stakeholders as well. If your team's performing well, your stakeholders will perform well. You can have the benefits of confidence. You'll have a stable workforce, an effective delivery, service delivery, more energy and enthusiasm. You'll have better engagement with your team, your people, your stakeholders. There's better attitude to change within the organisation. Effective problems to solving solutions to problems. A clear focus on organisational objectives. Productivity will rise because of morale will rise. Therefore, productivity will rise. You'll have loyalty because your team members are most likely wanting to stay with you. They'll stay on the team. They'll be loyal to you when it all goes wrong. If it goes wrong, hopefully it won't go wrong, but they'll be loyal to you. They'll be more motivated if you're rewarding, you're seen as a driver, you're working well as a team. They'll more likely want to hit the focuses and keep the organisation objectives strong and have better satisfaction. The assignment question is asking you in question 3, explain the benefits of effective leadership for organisations. Now, a stable, well-motivated and engaged workforce, teams that meet organisational needs and achieve the objectives, a good reputation for effective delivery of goods and services and excellent customer service, reduced waste, increased productivity and profitability, the ability to seek out new trends, ideas, business challenges, effective and imaginative solutions to problems, boundless energies and enthusiasm, a balanced and positive attitude to change, clear focus on objectives, Further reading can be found on page 9 of your unit handbook to help you answer this question, but some of these ones we've just been going through should help you cover it. So learning outcome 2. Understanding team dynamics. Now the learning objectives for this part of the session will be, for 2.1, explain the purpose of different types of teams. 2.2, describe the stages of team development and behaviour. 2.3, explain the concept of team role theory. And 2.4, explain how the principle of team role theory is used in team building and leadership. And finally, explain typical sources of conflict within a team and how they could be managed for 2.5. So what is the purpose of teams within an organisation? There are many reasons why organisations may set up teams, and these can include the fact that everybody on that team has a common purpose and objective. They'll create the team because they may be seen to have high productivity. This team could be a quality team. You're put together to work together because not only are they setting out an objective where you need to create something, your previous productivity has all been seen to be high, you produce high quality, and there is a good support system with you with continuous improvement, allowing for new initiatives and ideas. You can think around and have a look at some of the reasons why organisations have set up some teams. And some of these teams now are recently, with latest news, you only have to look at the NHS. We didn't have a COVID team before. We do now in the NHS. They were set up and they included highly motivating, high performing, high objectives, high productivity, good quality staff that could work in these tight crisis-driven units, knowing full well that they work well together with a good support system. In and amongst the factories that they are, again, you can see the teams are set up because they know these particular teams are driven. They focus on quality and they focus on the sustainability and the impact that will have on the business. Now there are out there, and there are types of teams that you have out there that are strategic. Try and think up as to reasons why some teams could be a strategic team. What would a strategic team be that you could think of could be used for? I can immediately think of one, and that's the NHS team I've just been talking about. That was set up as a strategy in order to combat COVID. Management teams, you only have to look to some of the senior people that you work for your employers. You may be part of the senior management team. An operational team, a team of people that work within the operations department or on the factory floor. A functional team, a group of people with a common functional expertise working towards shared objectives. Cross-functional team is a group with different functional expertise working towards common goals. So they could include such things as finance, marketing, operations, human resources. They tend to include employees from all levels of an organisation, so you get a good mix. Contract and project teams, they're brought in. Some people are brought in from outside specifically to work on a project, and they're there in many cases for only a short period of time. So once the project has completed and they've had their debrief, all been successful, that team will most likely disband. They may later form with other team members for another contract or project. Then you have virtual teams. The geographically dispersed team, remote teams, individuals working together from different locations and using technology to communicate, very much like I'm doing with you now. And when we have our group session, similar systems are used for that. And when you look at COVID and the damage that coronavirus has done to businesses, a lot of businesses have had to adapt with their teams to become virtual working. And then you have matrix teams, and matrix teams that cut across functions, business units, geography, multiple bosses, and they tend to report to more than one boss. So they'll have lots of different departments working within this one team. Self-managed speaks for itself, really. They look after themselves. Their team pretty much gets on with what they have. They have their own leader and they do their own project and they carry on with it. Now, a task force is set up, driven, brought in, usually, to achieve a goal. Maybe something was slipping at the department. Maybe something in the company wasn't going quite right. So they'll bring in a task force, usually highly motivated, high performing, highly productive, highly qualified, highly skilled. They'll bring them in to sort the problem out. Now, there are purposes for teams. There'll be a common purpose and objective. It's the whole point of having a team. They're brought in together to work together, and they're highly productive. And again, they have high quality. They have a good support system. There's should be seen an element of continuous improvement on the team in order for them to drive their goals. There's no point having people on the team going to waste and not improving their skills, being current and valid. They show new initiatives and new ideas. If you're bringing a new team, these new people that have been brought together, maybe for the first time, could sit around the table and suddenly come up with a new idea that has not been brought together before for the company or for the department. And as a result of these minds coming together, could be a brilliant moment for a company. Now, you're asking you in question 4 to explain the purpose of 3 different. So, forming a team. Bruce Tuckman came up with an analogy. Think back to a time when you were asked to work together with a small group of people. How did that go? When teams are assembled, it takes time for members to get to know one another and gel together. And Bruce Tuckman recognised that groups of people go through various stages before they become a performing and productive team. Now, he called this forming, storming, norming, performing and adjourning. Now, forming, the team members meet each other for the very first time. Think back to the teams and groups and the time you've arrived new to a new employer, or you brought in a new employee into your company and you look around and no one knows each other, or they may not know you, or you may not know them. The team members learn about the task, and all team members learn what their roles will be. Think about the time you've been all brought together to work on a project. At the time you first sat down, you may not have known people across the table from you. No one knew you, and no one really knew what they were there for. Now, the team members are dependent on the leader for direction. They need to know where they're going. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? Because what happens next is called storming. And the team members learn how to work together. The team members learn about each other's members' abilities. But the leader can focus on the team. The problem is the team members can compete against each other. Now, that could be great in some aspects because you can start bringing out the best in people. But the problem is you might find some people compete against each other because they don't like the person who's been allocated a particular task above them. They may even ask the leader, "Why are you the leader? I applied for the job to be leader. I applied for the job to be manager. How did you get this?" Can you think of some times when that's happened? Then the team starts to settle down, accepts its roles and responsibilities. They work together, they start to act together, the role evolve into helping the team succeed. The team members are more likely to express opinions, but productivity starts to dip off. Now, if you notice, productivity was rising when it was forming, and it was rising when it was storming, because they're all trying to make a name for each other. But it's taken a bit of a dip. This is when you get the people standing around the coffee machine chatting about last night's EastEnders. This is great, that the fact your team members are getting on so well with each other, but that you as a leader need to ensure that you recognise this and maybe just give them a gentle prod or guide into the direction of where their work is. Appreciate the fact that they're actually getting to like each other now, but the problem is they need to have the job done. Then you have the performing. Team members work really hard towards a goal. They work well as a unit. The members are flexible and they help each other. The leader's role is blurred because everybody's focused. When I say the leader's role is blurred, people still know who the leader is. But if you was to walk into the room as a complete unknown and saw this team in action, you'd see a lot of people busying, working. Who's the team leader? Well, they're not stomping around behind everybody looking over everybody's shoulders. They're not sat in the office with their feet up on the desk. They're not marching about and shouting and hollering and getting people to get it done. They're part of the team. They're blurred in amongst everybody else. This is brilliant. This is how the team is starting to perform. Can you think of when you've been on a team that's been working so well? The problem is, if you're on a contract team or a project team or a tasking team, what eventually happens once you've hit your objectives? Well, sadly, there's a thing called adjourning. And part of it's actually mourning. The team breaks up, moves on to other projects. Can you think of a time when you were working on a team that was doing so well, you absolutely adored the people you worked with, you loved the manager, the leader you were working with, and one of them decides to leave for whatever reasons, the leader has moved on. You decide they break the team up because you've hit your goals. You've hit your objectives. The team is no longer required. Can you remember how you felt? That's adjourning. You've actually gone through Tuckman's theory, because then you're placed into another team and the forming starts all over again. And that's the adjourning, moving it to the forming, is when you sit back and you think, do you remember when we used to work for such and such and they were a really great leader? Or do you remember when we worked on that team? That's mourning. That is part of Tuckman's theory. Now, your is asking you this, to describe the stages of team development and behaviour. A good one to use there would be Bruce Tuckman's forming, storming, norming, performing and adjourning. Forming, the team members are dependent on the leader for direction. Storming, the team members compete against each other. Norming, the team settles down, accepts the roles and responsibilities. Performing, the team works well as a unit. Adjourning, the team breaks up, moves on to a new project. That new project becomes a new team, and you start all over again with forming. Now, if you want any further information for this section, that can be found on pages 14 and 15 of your unit handbook to help you answer this question. Had 9 team roles. We're going to talk about Belbin's 19 roles, and the following slide breaks each of these roles down. Now, information for this question can be found on pages 16 and 17 of your book. Belbin identified 9 team roles based on the behaviours individuals displayed in the workplace. Now, teams need all roles to achieve goals and perform well. And most people perform well in more than one role. The 9 team roles that Belbin identified is that there will always be a chair or coordinator. Someone will always take the lead. There will always be someone who is the shaper, who blends and mends and fixes and moves everything together and gets things to work. There'll be an innovator, a plant, a monitor, evaluator, an implementer, company worker, the resource investigator, the team worker, the completer finisher, and the specialist. These roles are essentially this. The resource investigator gives the team a rush of enthusiasm at the start of the project by vigorously pursuing the contacts and opportunities. They're the one who says, I know who I can speak to, and gets immediately on the phone and starts ringing up lots of people and starts chasing around and knows exactly who to speak to. Then you have the team worker, the people in amongst the team who don't become the resource investigator, who are not the coordinator, not the chair, but they're seen as the oil between the cogs that keeps everything running smoothly. The team worker, someone who's running about, going about the mill of the everyday part of the project. Then you have the coordinator, and the coordinator is likely candidate for the chairperson of a team, because they have a talent for stepping back to see the big picture. They can facilitate the way the team is running, and they can push it into the direction they need to see it go. If there's a problem, they can steer the team in that direction and get it fixed. Then you have the plant. They're creative, they're unorthodox, they're generators of ideas. If you've got an innovative solution to a problem and it's needed, they are the good person to go and ask them. They've been there, they've seen it, they've known how it works, and they've known all about these things in the past. Then you have the monitor evaluator. They're the fair and the logical observers, and they judge what's going on within the team. They stand back, they look, and they can see what's going on. And they know, and they report back usually to the coordinator, and they can tell exactly what's going on and who's doing what. Then you have the specialist. They're passionate about learning in their own particular field. They want to develop. They're the good person there because they're a font of all knowledge. They may be extremely experienced. The shaper, as I spoke about earlier on, they're task focused, they pursues the objectives with vigour. They're driven by tremendous energy, and they can shape the task. They literally bend it and blend it and move it and manipulate it, and they can get it to work. Then you have the implementer. The implementer takes their colleagues' suggestions and gets them done. They turns them into positive action. So they listen to what the colleagues are suggesting around the table, and they'll go out and get it done. Then you have the completer finisher. This person is the perfectionist. They'll go that extra mile. They want to make sure that everything is just right because they're trying to impress, because they want to be seen to be trusted. They want to have everything double checked and checked again. Now, why do you think they're doing this? Is it because they want to keep doing this because they're that much of a perfectionist? Or do they have their eye on the coordinator's position? Maybe. Or the specialist position? Maybe for the next task. It's worth thinking about. So in your assignment, question 6 is asking you this. Explain the concept of Belbin's team role theory. So what we don't want to see here for this one is just chair, coordinator, shaper, innovator, plant. Tell us a bit about it. Tell us a bit about the chair, the coordinator. What do you expect them to be doing? What do you see the shaper doing? The innovator, the plant, the monitor evaluator. What do you see them doing in those roles to achieve the goals and perform well? Because most people perform well more in one role. And don't forget there are 9 team roles. So explain the concept behind it. Don't just list the names of the positions. Tell us a bit about them. So, building an effective team. There is a theory used in team building and leadership. Now, team building, the selection of team members to achieve a balance of attributes on the team, should be encouraging individuals to recognise their own roles, strengths and weaknesses. Building a team member's respect for each other's attributes and strengths. Encouraging the members to cooperate, accept allowable weaknesses and help and support each other, because everybody on the team, if you look at Belbin, have different roles. Not everybody's going to be the perfectionist. Not everybody's going to be the specialist. So others will be team workers. Others maybe the coordinator, because then it develops the strategies for effective team working. If you think back to Tuckman, and Tuckman said about the forming, and then you have the storming, if you don't allow for weaknesses and help and support each other, your team will be stuck at storming and may keep going back to forming, because no one can make a decision and no one can come together to think about how they're going to drive this further. And if you have a low task, low morale, low people person as a leader, your team's never going to get off the ground. The leadership, the allocation of tasks to suit individual needs and strengths and minimize the impact of their weaknesses. They need to be able to suit their individual needs and strengths to a particular task. They allocate those tasks to those who are best placed to do them. There's no point giving a task to someone who will end up being so out of their depth. If somebody wants to work and learn and be in a position where they will start to work, let's look at finance. If we look in a particular department, if somebody wants to work on a secondment in finance, they're not going to be just let loose on day one. They'll have to be coached and mentored by somebody in that department to ensure that that person is not out of their depth. Because they will decide on the allocation of members to different sub-teams. It's their decision. They'll look upon who is best placed for each part of the job. And what they will do then is motivate and support the individual team members. And they'll manage the conflicts and tensions and problems within the team, particularly when you're at the forming and storming stages, when even the leader is being challenged of their position, maybe by somebody on the team who wanted their job and didn't get it. And planning the level of supervision and management required for the type of task that's required. If you're working on a factory floor, you're going to be very quite task driven, because you have targets, you have cars and equipment being built. You can't have team members standing around chatting. Things need to be done. But if you're up on the offices and you've got flexible objectives and you've got flexible time for deadlines, you may find that you're a bit more laissez-faire, more democratic. So again, it's dependent on the situation you are in with your team. Now, the allocation of the task and the individual needs and the planning of level of supervision and management required doesn't happen overnight. These things develop over time, and it's important that people recognize this, certainly from a leader. And this is why it's important that a leader be self-confident, and the leader has the ability to be able to pick up from where others may have left off before them and be able to drive those tasks. Because if they see an ounce of weakness, you might find that the team starts pulling away from the task, starts pulling away. And if you have an individual who starts constantly challenging the team, the task, and the leader, you might find that John Adair's action-centered leadership starts to break apart. The question is asking you, at question 7, explain how the principles of team role theory is used in team building and leadership. Now, the selection of the team members to achieve a balance of attributes on the team, again, encouraging individuals to recognize their own roles, strengths and weaknesses, supporting each other, building team members' respect for each other. Leadership, the allocation of tasks to suit the individual needs and strengths, minimize the impact of their weaknesses, so you're not putting somebody in a position where they're going to potentially drown in work. Deciding on the allocation of the members to different sub-teams, managing conflict, tension. All of this should be able to assist you in explaining how the principles of team role theory is used in building leadership. And again, if you need any further help with this, further reading can be found on pages 17 and 18 of your handbook. There will always be disagreements and some conflict with teams, and it's important that we recognise this, and it's important we deal with this. And there are reasons for conflict, and some of these conflict will happen between individuals. Not everybody's going to get on with everybody. You spend more time in the office than we do at home. You're flung into a situation with people you don't really know. You may say the wrong thing at the wrong time to one person, and the next thing you know, you're at conflict with them. That conflict could be a business conflict, could be a personal conflict. You may have conflict between groups. There may be complete dissatisfaction with the workload or work slippages, lack of appreciation or perceived unfairness. You might take a grievance against a member of staff. You may take a grievance against a member of a team leader. There's maybe misunderstandings or poor sharing of information because you feel that the leader is not actually sharing you the information that you feel that you are entitled to have. External problems that affect the team or individuals. You've got a member of the team who's constantly having childcare issues, who's constantly having a problem with a boiler, who's constantly having the fact that their alarm clock didn't go off. They're rolling in late again. That's going to affect the team. If you've got other external problems, can you think of some others? Maybe a delivery has arrived late. Maybe a delivery's missing. The fact that now COVID has come about and everything has had to change. That is a problem that's going to affect teams or individuals where people were working together quite closely to achieve a task. Suddenly, where they're all sat round in the same office, now they're working remotely. It's very, very difficult. And if you've ever tried to hold a meeting online on using systems such as GoTo or Microsoft Teams, it's very, very difficult to try and get your point across when you're staring at a computer screen with everybody trying to talk at the same time. People will have natural differences of opinion. Not everybody's going to like the same things you have. Not everyone thinks the same way as you. And people may have differing objectives. And those objectives could be incompatible. And they could create rivalry. Think back to what I said when it came to forming and storming. They wanted your job. You're now the team leader. They wanted that position and they got turned down and you got the job. And they feel maybe that they've got different objectives or they would have dealt with it differently. Not you, not the way you dealt with it. There may be bullying, harassment or personality clashes between individuals. And the management of conflict is really important to stop this or to negate this or certainly reduce this from happening. And negotiation between the parties is important. Getting people to sit around a table and talk it out and come to a compromise. Showing good open communication. Understanding that there are different personalities of people on the team. You are going to have somebody who's a perfectionist. You are going to have someone who's a shaper. You are going to have somebody who has to be the coordinator. That's how it is. Belbin showed this. Setting non-conflicting goals. It's possible for people who do not get on with each other to be able to work together and hit targets. Clear explanations of policies and procedures. If people are bullying, harassing, and there are toe-to-toe, nose-to-nose arguments within the building, in the car park, in some cases, there needs to be a clear explanation of policies and procedures, and it will not be tolerated. And you need to be consistent. You cannot be giving a decision to one person and not the other. You need to ensure as a leader, as a manager, that you are applying fair, consistent approaches to conflict management. Otherwise, you will find yourself on the receiving end of maybe a bullying or harassment accusation. But it's also about ensuring that there's recognizing and rewarding effort. Carrot and stick is the old saying. Dangle a carrot in front of the horse and the horse will go after the carrot. If you keep hitting the horse with the stick, the horse is going to become very downtrodden and is not going to want to work for you anymore. They will give in after an amount of time, but if you put a carrot in front of the horse will see that there is a goal. If you recognise people for their effort, maybe vouchers, a pat on the back, a congratulatory email, calling them out in a team meeting and saying this was brilliant, thank you so much, it goes a long way. You don't think people realise just how much that actually feels when somebody's called out in an email, in a meeting, and told what a wonderful job they're doing and how praised and how they felt and how they felt on the team. And having early intervention is really important. If you can spot these problems early, you can get in there and you can solve these problems before they become a crisis, because the last thing you want is this to start splitting up your team. And before you know it, they'll start looking at you and they'll start looking at your leadership qualities. And are you too laissez-faire? Are you too democratic? Are you not authoritarian when you need to be? So question 8 is asking you to explain the typical sources of conflict within a team and how they could be managed. So to recap, some of the sources are conflict between individuals, conflict between groups, dissatisfaction with the workload or work slippages, lack of appreciation and perceived unfairness, misunderstandings and poor sharing of information, external problems that affect the team or individuals, differences of opinion, people having different objectives, incompatible objectives and rivalry, bullying, harassment, or personality clashes between individuals, and some management ones where there's negotiation, having open communication, understanding the different personalities of people on the team, setting non-conflicting goals, clear explanations of policies and procedures, and being consistent and fair is a good way of managing the conflict on your team. And further reading can be found on pages 18 to 21 of your handbook to help you answer this question. In this session, we will understand techniques used to manage the work of teams. And to do that, we will explain the factors to be taken into account when setting targets. Describe a range of techniques to monitor the flow of work of a team. Describe techniques to identify and solve problems within a team. Setting SMART targets. Individuals, teams, organisational. SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound or timely. Targets need to be SMART because in order to set a target for someone or for an organisation to achieve, you need to specify that task to be completed. That task needs to be measurable. How will it be evaluated? And this will indicate when the task has been accomplished, whether that be through a target objective being completed, such as a completion date, or it may be a result, such as an exam result for an individual. Achievable. Is the task achievable? And what are the resources and actions that are required by a team or an individual to achieve that task? Is it relevant? Is the task relevant to achieving the particular stated priority, especially if the team has objectives to meet in order for an organisation or a department to meet their objectives? And time bound. How long will the task take? What time frame will it be achieved? Some factors that to take into account when setting targets for individuals. You need to assess their current skill levels and their knowledge levels, their experience and their attributes, their ambitions, and plan for career development and their team role. And any personal issues that can impact their ability to meet the target dates. SMART targets should be used when you are dealing with appraisals in order for an individual on your team to have an objective and a time date when to achieve that objective, whether that be an objective that's set for the team or for the company or for a personal objective for their career development. For teams, you need to take into account the team's current experience level, the current skills on the team, the current knowledge levels, the previous levels of activity and workload, and current levels of activity and workload on that team at that moment, because this could cause a block on obtaining the objective, and the team roles of different team members. And if this is a development need for the team, their actual development needs in themselves. And staffing levels on team. Absence management is important. If you do not have the correct number of people on your team due to absence for abstractions, sickness, or for other reasons such as travel abroad to other locations for secondment or other departments, the SMART objective for your team may not be applicable at that time until your absence levels are managed. Your team morale. And they must tie into organisational targets and needs to ensure your team is driving in the same direction to achieve the objectives of the company. For organisational, how business objectives impact one another and what the business priorities are. The current and planned stocks of physical resources, the current staffing levels, the planned recruitment drive of staff morale within the organisation, staff retention levels, financial resources available and the ability to fund plans in order for you to drive this target, current business trends, the technology you have available. Is your SMART target unachievable due to the technology you have? What are your competitors doing? And any new legislative requirements. Question 9 is asking you to explain the factors to be taken into account when setting targets, and further reading can be found on 22 to 24 of your unit handbook. But don't forget, for SMART, for individual, their current skills, knowledge, experience and attributes, ambitions, team role, some personal issues that could impact the desire or ability to achieve the targets. For a team, their current level of experience, the previous levels of activity and workload, their development needs, their morale, their motivation. For organisational, how the business objectives have an impact on each other, current staffing levels, planned recruitment, morale, retention levels, new legislation and regulations are all but just some of the examples that you could use to explain the factors to be taken into account when setting targets. Having picked your team members and set targets, it is important to monitor the flow of work. There are various ways in which workflows can be managed, and some of the tools include the use of SMART targets that were agreed with the staff member or the team. Using visual inspections on the work being done. So you're actually making a point of going around your team, walking about and actually looking at and inspecting or having brought to you the work that's being done at this time. One-to-one meetings with staff, whether that be weekly briefings or during appraisal times. You need to be able to keep up to date to monitor the flow of work that is taking place. If you're using a project or on a project, use of Gantt charts or other charts or graphs such as milestone graphs are other ways of ensuring that work is being monitored and that dates and target dates are being achieved, and if not, why not? And the use of reports and data being analysed whether that be through review meetings, so everybody's sitting around the table and discussing the data. And in review meetings, a good way to discuss what has gone wrong, and if something has gone wrong, or if things went well, why they went particularly well. So question 10 is asking you to describe a range of techniques to monitor the flow of work for a team. So again, just to recap, using the agreed SMART targets, using Gantt charts, graphs, milestone charts, visually inspecting the work, one-to-one meetings, review meetings, and discussing the progress and analysing reports and data. Problems do occur, and when they do, it's important to identify their cause in order to resolve them. And how to identify problems in your team. It may be necessary for you to arrange and carry out formal or informal observations of your team to see what is taking place. Think of some ways that how you could do this. Appraisals of staff working on the team to see if they are meeting their own targets or work objectives. This could be a good time to spot if whether or not that SMART target you set is not being achieved due to various reasons such as personal problems or workload. However, one-to-one meetings that should be taking place throughout this time of appraisal and up until the formal appraisal meeting should have identified these problems early enough for you to be able to resolve them in order for your team member to be able to get on with their job and hit the company's objectives or team objectives. Tracking progression of the team against key performance indicators, and these key performance indicators are the objective targets that are usually set by the business. Checking staff attendance records. Think back to John Adair. If you've got one particular member of your team, an individual who is forever having Mondays or Fridays off for various reasons or having constant problems, this individual needs support. However, too much support and the team could find themselves being neglected and the objectives and targets become skewed. But checking your staff attendance records are really important if you are a laissez-faire style manager, because we do not want you to be taken advantage of if you trust your team and somebody abuses your trust. Team meetings and briefings regarding performance. Again, praise where praise is due. However, should there be any issues on the team that need addressing, these need to be brought up in a team meeting where people can air any grievances or any problems, anything to do with performance. They could be very valid reasons as to why a team is missing their targets. And it's important to have one-to-one discussions with staff and team members in order to build trust and the ability to have open communications with them and the ability for them to come to you when they know that there's a problem and you will listen. So solving the problems you've identified by having a one-to-one discussion with a staff member or members. They may be underperforming due to a lack of training. There may be conflict on the team with other members. They may have confidence issues, so their morale is going to drop. And if morale drops, productivity drops. So it's important to ensure that you've addressed this. By conducting team review meetings where everybody is present, they can come up with these possible resolutions to problems. Again, it builds an air of trust with your team if they feel that they are have an ability to be able to speak to you and be able to air their grievances. Feedback mechanisms in place, ensure you have those so team members can feed in their views on how to resolve issues outside of the larger group meeting forums. So if somebody wants to speak to you offline, so to speak, then they can do. and having meetings with different team leaders or managers to collaboratively resolve issues across teams. The other teams may be experiencing the same problems, and if these problems are reoccurring across teams, then there is something central that needs to be dealt with, maybe something systematic. So as a result of that, the coming together of team leaders, you can quickly resolve problems that can actually have a resounding success across all teams. So question 11 is asking you to describe techniques to identify and solve problems within a team. So identifying, just a recap, formal, informal observations, appraisals, checking staff attendance records, during one-to-one discussions or during team meetings and briefings. For solving, we want to be looking at you to describe some elements to do with one-to-one discussions, maybe team review meetings and briefings, and different opportunities for team members to pass on their views, and members with managers and other teams, meetings with members of management of other team leaders. In this section, we're going to look at understand the impact of change management within a team. And to do that, we will describe the typical reasons for organisational change, explain the importance of accepting change positively, explain the potential impact on a team of negative responses to change, and explain how to implement change within a team. All change, all change, all change. Things invariably change in our own lives for various reasons, and this is equally applicable to organisations. The process of effectively managing change within organisations is often referred to as change management. Change within organisations can be as a consequence of many different reasons, and some of the main ones could be as follows. Changes in technology. For example, the high-speed train you see there on the Great Western Route was being used until very recently. A change and upgrade in signalling and modern technology resulted then them buying the new Hitachi trains. If you are in manufacturing, you are going to want to keep up with the latest in cutting-edge technology to step ahead of your competitors. Therefore, there will be a need to invest. If you are using computer software and hardware, you're going to need to ensure that you have the latest to not only be able to keep up with your competitors, but also to ensure that you're not subjected to any malicious attacks through hackers or viruses. And reflecting what the competitors are doing. If you take the changes in the marketplace and reflecting customer expectations in and around the coronavirus with the COVID-19 situation, businesses were changing very, very rapidly overnight. In some cases, some companies that never dealt with home deliveries or click and collect before suddenly did so. Why? Because they looked at what their competitors were doing, and in order to ensure that they survived as a business, they had to change. And this change was reflected by customer expectations. The customers drove this demand. And the changes in the marketplace, such as the high street being closed, and if you look at the impact that the rental increases have had on the high street, and also with the coronavirus, businesses have had to adapt more of an online approach. So they have an online shop as well as a retail shop, which has had to remain closed due to the coronavirus. And this again comes back to the legislation and the regulation and standards that have been brought in. If you look at the minimum wage, that is a change. When that came in, companies had to adapt to this new piece of legislation, the Working Time Directive, the Health and Safety at Work Act. Companies had to bring in, and organisations had to bring in changes to ensure that they met with new legislation. So those who are on minimum wage, and there has been a recent increase, have had an increase in their wage. So therefore they're having to ensure that they stay and keep up with the latest pieces of legislation. And that again includes the coronavirus legislation, where companies are having to adapt their businesses in order to ensure they stay within the law. Environmental factors, if you look at companies that are with ethical and moral procedures in their companies, policies to be green. If you look at the changes in the legislation around carrier bags, again, this was an environmental factor. If you are a company that produces semiconductors and there is a moral obligation to no longer use lead-based solder, therefore, because of the damage to the impact on the environment, not only is that also a piece of legislation that was brought in, but there was also a moral obligation not to do this. But it also, in your competitors may well be using technology that does not have lead-based solder. So therefore, in some countries that will have this legislation not to use lead-based solder, you need to be ensuring that if you want to keep up with these other countries and sell your product there, you need to ensure you meet these environmental factors. And the same goes for politics. Lots of companies will look to see who is going to be in power within the next 5 years, and when a general election is coming up, depending on how party politics make a play towards business or towards society as a whole. And again, internal business needs, cutting costs and production changes to production lines, and this comes with the external business factors. And I would go back to COVID-19 again. If you look at Ford UK at their Dagenham engine plant have moved over May this year of 2020 to make ventilators for the health service for hospitals, and the same goes for Dyson, McLaren, companies such as who are producing Hoovers and high performance motor cars. Their changes and modernisation, cutting costs in production lines, changing to product lines, and this comes to keeping up with changes in technology. If you're still producing something that's antiquated compared to your competitors, you will need to ensure you modernize. And external business factors such as the coronavirus has seen a lot of companies forcibly modernize into using online technology, whereas before this training course in its own right would have been delivered to you as a class-based session. But because of the coronavirus and external business factor, it's been adapted to be delivered online. So question 12 is asking you to describe typical reasons for organisational change. So think back over what I've just discussed with you. So there are changes in technology, the competitors' activities, changes in the marketplace, new legislation, regulations, standards, environmental factors, financial issues, political factors, internal business factors and external business factors. Don't forget, if you are going to describe, don't just list them. We'd like to hear I'd like to see you write a little bit about each one so we know that you understand fully. Embracing change. Studies suggest human beings, by their very nature, tend not to like change. Think about how adaptable to change are you? Because if your daily routine was completely changed, how would you feel or cope? Because change is unfortunately inevitable in business, in life. Those who adapt and embrace change tend to be the most successful in their careers because they're flexible. They can adapt to new technologies, new ways of working, and they find that they can deal with the change. When change happens, employees tend to do some of the following. Complain. They'll complain about the change. They don't want it to happen. It never happened in their day. But it did. They just didn't realise. They ended up changing without realising. They may become obstructive and therefore consequently difficult to manage. They may leave the organisation, but guess what? They're going to go into an organisation where change happens. It may have happened just before they arrived. They may embrace the change and capitalise on the opportunities which may accompany it. And eventually, everybody will have to accept the change. To effectively manage change, it helps to take a step back and review the whole process logically. Support everyone during the change process. Embrace change. It's going to happen. It's going to happen anyway. So manage the process positively so the organisation, the teams and the staff can stay ahead of the game and remain competitive and effective. Staff who work through the process together stand a much better chance of success for themselves, colleagues and the organisation itself. And good communication is key. Keep your staff informed. Keep your staff informed of relevant facts. Never speculate, because speculation can cause disruption, confusion and a drop in morale. So question 13 is asking you to explain the importance of accepting change and think about the changes in technology, competitors' activities, the changes in the marketplace, changing customer expectations, new legislation, environmental factors, financial issues, political issues, internal and external business factors that may come into play. And by all means, if you want to use the coronavirus as an example, I think that is a very good idea to do so. Further reading can be found on pages 32 to 33 of your handbook to help you answer this question. Change will impact staff in different ways, so it's important to understand and recognise this. Because during a process of change, team members may experience the following: increased levels of stress, feelings of inadequacies, reduced productivity accompanied by failure to achieve targets, reduced pay, reduction in job satisfaction, reduced career opportunities, a lack of confidence in team managers and team leaders. They may result in conflict between team members and a loss of key team members due to staff reductions or because they choose to leave. They feel that they do not want to be part of the change and leave the organisation. There'll be a feeling of a lack of job security, a closure of organisation or sites within the portfolio of an organisation. Now, Kubler-Ross demonstrated this with the Kubler-Ross change curve. And as you can see on the graph, morale and competence is at a high when the change is announced. So therefore, morale and competence is high, but there is an initial shock. But morale and competence over time will start to increase as there's a denial from the staff. The team members will be in total disbelief, looking for evidence that this isn't true. This isn't going to happen to them. Their office, their factory, their shop will not close, or these changes will not come in. If you look at the situation that Jaguar Land Rover found that they were in with their teams when, as a result of robotisation was brought in for the welding and for the construction of their vehicles, their staff were in shock with this because their vehicles used to be hand-built. And there was disbelief looking for evidence that this isn't true. Well, no, we're a traditional company. We build things by hand. And as a result of that, this isn't going to be true. But it was true. And there was frustration due to the fact that recognition of things that are different. And they became angry, and the unions became involved. So morale and competence started to fall. Productivity started to fall. Targets were starting to be missed, which in many cases can actually prove the team managers and leaders and senior managers point to say, well, if we have robotisation in place, we wouldn't have this situation. So this resulted in depression, low mood, lacking in energy. In many cases, if you look at some organisations, this is where your strikes will take place. Then there was an experiment over time, and there was an integration with an initial engagement with a new situation of the introduction of the equipment alongside the people that were going to work with them. And what they did was retrain their staff to work on multiple areas. So they actually became more competent. They became omnicompetent. So morale and competence actually started to rise. And with the decision, they learned how to work in the new situation. They actually felt more positive because they found that the robots didn't actually replace them. They worked alongside them. And if anything, they supervised the robots. They checked to make sure that the robots doing the welding and the assembly were doing it correctly. And they also found themselves being retrained to work in multiple departments. So the stamping plant, the electrical department. So they had multiple competencies which actually increased their competence and their feeling of confidence. Eventually, over time, the morale and competence grew, and they were fully integrated, and they became a renewed individual. So question 14 is asking you to explain the potential impact on a team of negative responses to change. So some of those potential impacts that we have discussed are the increased stress, the feeling inadequate, reduced pay, reduced job satisfaction, lack of confidence in the team leaders and the managers. There's a conflict within the team, the loss of key members of the team, and there are many more. So explain the potential impact on a team of negative responses to change, and further reading can be found on page 34 of your unit handbook to help you answer this question. Another model in how to implement change within a team is ADKAR. And ADKAR is about the pre-contemplation for the A, awareness. The pre-contemplation of the need for change. What is and isn't working within your organisation? What are your options? Communicate that there is a problem that needs addressing and for the order for change, and focus attention on the most important reasons to change. And then the contemplation, the desire to participate in the change and communicate benefits for the adoption of Scrum, which is a framework for project management that emphasizes teamwork, accountability, and iterative progress towards a well-defined goal. There's 3 pillars of Scrum, which are transparency, inspection, and adaptation. To identify risks involved, build momentum, and address the fears of those who are reluctant or fearful of change. Then comes the preparation stage, where there's the know how to change and to the knowledge of learning new technical skills, learning how to share information and setting reasonable targets, and this is known as the enablement zone. In order for the change to take place, you need to be able to enable it with awareness, desire for change, and the knowledge. Then comes the action and the ability to change and to employ a suitable governance framework, training the basics, starting small. Don't do it by stealth. Keep your staff and teams informed. Adjust processes that touch the Scrum teams, those that are going to be working together as groups. maintenance, reinforcement, use a scrum coach if need be to keep the teams working together, identify change champions, people who are driving for the cause, share those experiences of the teams that are coming together and learn from the early mistakes and sustain the change. And that's known as the engagement zone. Keeping everybody working to drive the change and to keep that change going. Because after that change takes place and becomes business as usual, eventually another change will come later down the line that will completely change the current state of play. So question 15 is asking you to explain how to implement change within a team. So think of the awareness of the need for change, the desire to participate in the change, knowledge about how to change, the ability to implement change, reinforcement to sustain the change. And by covering every aspect of this theory of ADKAR, team leaders can ensure that change is implemented effectively. In this section, we're going to understand team motivation. And we'll be doing that by explaining the meaning of the term motivation. Explain the factors that affect the level of motivation of team members. And describe techniques that can be used to motivate team members. And explain how having motivated staff affects an organisation. What motivates us to do things in life or in our careers? Abraham Maslow came up with a theory called the hierarchy of needs to explain what motivates people. People will have different needs at different times, and it's important to realise that, because not everybody will be doing exactly the same thing all of the time, and people will have different motivations in life, and it's important to recognise that. Everybody has basic fundamental needs: water, food, warmth, the feeling of security, safety, the need to feel safe from an attack, conflict. There's a need for a sense of belonging, love, friendship. For some people, there is a feeling that they wish to have higher up the hierarchy, a need for esteem and respect. Top of the pyramid, reaching our full potential, feeling recognised. Now, when it comes to the basic fundamental needs, without basic fundamental needs of water, food, warmth, and so forth, the remaining ones above can't take place. That is the foundation of the pyramid. Not everybody wants to reach their full potential. Some people are very happy with their lot, very happy with what they do, and they choose to carry on doing 9 to 5 job, coming in, doing what they need to do, and leave. They don't want promotion. They're quite happy. They're happy that they have their group of friends. They have no need to grow beyond that. They will stop at a particular point, and it's important to realise that, because not everybody is the same. Some would like to have fame and fortune and reach their full potential and be recognised everywhere they go. For some people, just the feeling of being safe and the feeling of being loved is just enough for them. So, question 16 is asking you to explain the meaning of the term motivation. And it's the reason for acting or behaving in a particular way, the desire, enthusiasm, or willingness to do something. Motivation can be the thing that makes us want to do something, or the feeling of wanting to do something. And further reading can be found on page 40 of your unit handbook to help you answer this question. Factors which may affect the level of motivation of team members. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs applies here just as well. Every team member has a basic fundamental need for water, food, warmth, fear. They want to feel warm during the winter in an office. They want to feel cool during the summertime. They want to be able to feel safe within their environment, good working conditions and job security. They don't want to fear of having been made redundant. They want this. They want good working conditions and times within. And they want to feel that they're being appreciated by their team members, their team leaders, with good communication, good bonuses, good recognition. And for some, they enjoy coaching sessions, the appreciation of work being done, and the opportunity for promotion and growth. And for some, it's about reaching their full potential, recognition, and having the control over the job, in many cases being the CEO or the management themselves. For some, just the feeling of being safe and belonging to the team is sufficient. So it's important to recognize that, because not everybody wants promotion. Not everybody wants to sit at the top of the tree. There's only one room for one person sitting in the CEO's position. Most people within will quite happily want to be appreciated of what they do, and good communication and feedback about what they do. It doesn't have to always be monetary, but just a recognition of good work is enough for most people to want to feel that they belong. And for those who do show the feelings and the signs and exhibit the signs of wanting to be promoted, those are the ones that should be coached and encouraged, continually have an appreciation of their work being done and given the opportunity for promotion and growth, and recognizing those that wish to be promoted. So question 17 is asking you to explain the factors that affect the level of motivation of team members. And again, it's interesting, challenging and exciting work. Job security, opportunities for promotion and growth, control over the job, good wages, good working conditions, fear and bonuses. And page 41 and 45 of your unit handbook will help you answer these questions further. Some practical methods to motivate individuals. Sharing the organisational vision and values, and what the organisation wants to achieve and how they as an individual can strive to assist them to do it. Valuing individuals could include a financial reward, but making sure that your individuals on your teams actually feel appreciated and are given regular feedback. For those that wish to be progressed and to grow, stretching their talent by coaching and mentoring can help. Effective and supportive supervision by being there for your teams. Ongoing development opportunities for staff. Setting an example to your staff, leading from the front by being there, helping the people up, motivating them. And the correct use of specialist advice and support. Now, for sharing organisational vision and values, it's a good time to share these, maybe when behaviour of the employee is contrary to the values of the organisation, or when the company ethos needs to be reinforced to guide them back on track. Can also be used in maybe appraisals and also disciplinary hearings. Studies suggest that some employees value recognition over monetary reward. Rewards do not have to be financial, nor should recognition wait until appraisals. Managers should value their staff when the opportunity presents itself and do so regularly. To hang on to high-performing staff members, they need to be challenged and stretched, or they may go elsewhere. Studies suggest financial reward is not the sole motivator of staff. Staff development is a good motivator as it enables progression. Remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Some people want the self-esteem. Some people want to get to the top of the ladder. Your job is to assist them to get there and to motivate to get there. And having effective and professional leaders setting an example are often seen as motivators in their own right, because they're getting their hands dirty themselves, and by leading from the front, high ethical standards of behaviour should be showcased at all times. So question 18 is asking you to describe 3 techniques that can be used to motivate team members, noting when these chosen techniques should be used. So to recap, sharing vision and values to make the team members aware of the company goals and values, valuing people to develop high quality relationships, giving regular feedback to raise self-esteem and catch problems earlier, stretching talent and ability to challenge more able team members, ongoing training to provide reassurance to employees and support improvement. Further reading can be found on pages 46 to 49 of your unit handbook to help you answer this question. Highly motivated staff are a sound business investment that will pay dividends. They bring higher productivity, better organisational performance, excellent customer service, good organisational reputation, the ability to attract top candidates for employment, financial stability, and confidence to forward plan. As Sir Richard Branson once said, train people well enough so they can leave. Treat them well enough so they don't want to. Question 19 is asking you to explain how motivated staff affects an organisation. So you might want to think of some of the points that's just been raised there. And further reading can be found on pages 48 to 49 of your unit handbook to help you answer this question. And this concludes the first of the 2 sessions relating to this unit. In your next presentation, we will be covering the following topics: understand business, understand how to communicate work-related information in session 2 of 2. You will have been sent an email, time, date and GoToMeeting link for you to log on for the teaching session which accompanies this presentation. To get the most from your learning journey, please ensure you log on to this online session with your trainer. Well, I hope you found this presentation useful, and we encourage you to use the unit handbooks, which are accessible in PDF format from your ePortfolio to support your studies. And we also would like you to click subscribe in the YouTube channel to be alerted to any new videos that come from us. If you have any questions, please can you use the GoToMeeting to ask them, or by all means drop us an email at our remote assistance service, and we can be contacted at learners@solutionsequinox.com. Email subjects must be headed NCFE Leadership, and our 2 mobile phone numbers are shown below. Thank you very much for listening.